One night, as the stars shone brightly, a heavenly voice broke into the life of Abraham and said, "Leave your homeland and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you." This voice was not audible to the ears, but was clearer and more powerful than the roar of any storm. "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and through you, all peoples on earth will be blessed." Abram's heart pounded fiercely. Without hesitation he replied, "Here I am, Lord. I will do your will." The next morning he shared the revelation with his wife Sarai. "We are leaving," he said, his voice firm. Taken aback, Sarai asked, "To where?" "I don't know," Abram replied, his eyes filled with resolve. "The Lord will guide us." The departure was sudden. Abram, Sarai, their nephew Lot, and all their possessions set off on a journey into the unknown. The familiar lands were left behind, and the desert stretched out before them. One night, while camping under the starry sky, the voice of God spoke again, "To your offspring, I will give this land." Abram, gazing across the vast lands of Canaan, felt the weight of the divine promise. But the journey was not without trials. In his wanderings from the green plains of Canaan to the mysterious and mystical realms of Egypt, Abram faced challenges and trials, but also constant reaffirmations of God's promise. "Look now toward the heavens, and count the stars if you are able. So shall your offspring be." Years passed and the wait for offspring dragged on. Sarai, in despair and losing faith in the divine promise, gave her servant Hagar to Abraham. From this union, Ishmael was born, who would become the father of a numerous nation, the Arab people, historic enemies of the people of Israel. Yet God had not forgotten his promise. Finally Sarai, now advanced in years, gave birth to Isaac. Joy filled the home of Abraham and Sarai. "God has brought us laughter," Sarah said, her voice brimming with joy. "Everyone who hears this will laugh with me." The call of Abraham marked the beginning of a great nation. The promise extended not only to Abraham, but to his offspring as well, a lineage that would include kings and prophets and eventually the Savior of the world. Isaac grew up and married Rebekah, with whom he had twins, Esau and Jacob. Esau became the father of the Edomites, and Jacob the father of the Israelites. Jacob had 12 sons and 1 daughter. His second-to-last son, Joseph, received the promise made to his family. This calling sparked envy in his brothers, who sold him into slavery in Egypt. But Joseph, with God's guidance, rose from slavery to become the right-hand man of the Pharaoh of Egypt. Then, a devastating famine struck the land. His brothers in search of food came to Egypt, unaware that the powerful governor they encountered was the brother they had betrayed. "I am Joseph," he finally revealed, tears in his eyes, "the one you sold into Egypt. But fear not, for God sent me here to preserve your lives." Joseph, later named Israel, forgave his brothers and relocated his entire family to Egypt, in the fertile land of Goshen. Here, the people of Israel settled, then numbering 70 persons. Years went by and the 70 people grew astonishingly in number. But a new dynasty of pharaohs rose to the throne. "This Israelite people has become too numerous and powerful," murmured the pharaoh, his voice filled with distrust. "If they ally with our enemies, they could defeat us. We must act." With a sudden gesture he commanded, "Enslave the Israelites. Let them make bricks without rest. Let them build our cities. Keep them under a heavy yoke." The transition was brutal. The Israelites who once lived in prosperity found themselves in chains. "Faster!" shouted the overseers, whips slicing through the air and flesh. "There is no rest for the slaves." Moses, born during this time of oppression, was saved from a cruel order by the Pharaoh to kill all male babies. "Throw the child into the Nile," ordered the Pharaoh. But Moses' mother, with a heavy heart, hid her son in a basket and placed it on the river. While bathing in the Nile, the Egyptian princess discovered a basket. "It's a Hebrew baby," she exclaimed, lifting the child with tenderness. "I will name him Moses, for I drew him out of the water." Moses grew up in the palace, yet he never forgot his roots. One day, watching an Egyptian overseer beat a Hebrew slave, rage consumed him. "Stop!" he yelled, killing the Egyptian in a fit of anger. Knowing his life was in peril, he fled to the desert. Years of slavery wore on. The Israelites, exhausted and desperate, cried out to God, "Save us, Lord, deliver us from this oppression." God heard their cries. In the desert, a bush burned yet was not consumed. Moses, now a shepherd, approached it cautiously. "Moses, Moses," called God's voice from the bush. "Here I am," he replied, falling to his knees. The bush said, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt." "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" asked Moses, his voice filled with fear. "I will be with you," God assured. "You will lead the Israelites to a promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey." Moses, following the divine command, returned to Egypt, confronting the Pharaoh with courage. "Let my people go," he declared, his voice echoing through the throne room. The Pharaoh, with a cold stare, replied, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? I will not let Israel go." The plagues began. The waters of the Nile turned to blood, the fish died, and the stench filled the land. Frogs, flies, and lice invaded the houses, sowing chaos. "Moses, plead with your God to stop this," the Pharaoh implored. But each time the plagues ceased, his heart hardened once more. "There will be one final plague," Moses warned, "the death of the firstborn." In the darkness of night, the angel of death passed through Egypt. Cries of anguish filled the air as families woke to find their firstborn lifeless. "Go," the Pharaoh shouted, his voice broken by grief. "Take your people and leave this place." Then, after 400 years in Egypt, the Israelites set out under the leadership of Moses, with 600,000 men, not counting women and children, approximately 2 million people in total. Moses led them towards the Red Sea, but soon Pharaoh changed his mind. "Let my army pursue them," he commanded, and the war chariots raced after them. By the sea, the Israelites despaired. "Did you bring us here to die, Moses?" they cried out, fear palpable in their voices. "Trust in the Lord," Moses responded, raising his staff. Instantly the sea parted, the waters forming walls on either side, and a dry path emerged. "Forward," Moses commanded, and the people crossed the seabed as the Egyptian army quickly closed in. Reaching the other side, Moses extended his hand once more, and the waters closed, burying the pursuers in a torrent of divine judgment. Now free, the people celebrated with songs and dances. "The Lord is my strength and my song," they sang. "He has been my salvation." The journey through the desert began, bringing with it new trials. Water was scarce and hunger plagued them. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die here?" they complained. Moses, crying out to God, witnessed water spring from a rock and manna, the bread of heaven covering the ground each morning. At Mount Sinai, God delivered his law. "I am the Lord your God," he declared from the cloud of glory. "You shall have no other gods before me." The people, trembling, agreed to the covenant, yet temptation swiftly followed. While Moses was on the mountain, they crafted a golden calf. "These are your gods, Israel," they shouted. God's wrath flared, but Moses interceded. "Forgive their sin, Lord," he pleaded, "and if not, blot me out of your book that you have written." Mercy prevailed and the journey continued. Years of wandering in the desert were tough, marked by rebellion and faith, provision and judgment. At last, they reached the border of the promised land. Moses, old and weary, looked at his people. "I will not cross with you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Joshua will lead you. Be strong and courageous." With those words, Moses bid farewell, and the people of Israel prepared to seize the land that God had promised to their ancestors. Joshua, bearing the mantle of Moses, stood before the Jordan, its waters roaring ahead. "Prepare everything. In 3 days we will cross," he commanded, his voice brimming with resolve. The priests advanced, carrying the Ark of the Covenant. As they touched the water, the river halted, creating a dry path. "Forward," Joshua shouted, and the people crossed, their hearts filled with awe and hope.